In this video, we're looking at Claude Cowork, what it is, how it differs from regular Claude chat, and why it matters if your work involves turning scattered notes, files, and follow-ups into something organized and useful. I'll walk through the basic setup, then show a real example so you can see what it looks like when Cowork handles multi-step tasks instead of just answering one prompt at a time. But a quick intro before we get into it. My name is Scott Midgley and I'm the co-founder of Wellforce IT. We're a managed IT and cybersecurity firm serving professional services organizations across the DC metro area and central North Carolina. A lot of what I do day to day is helping firms and organizations figure out where AI tools fit into their workflows and where they don't. This is the first in a short series of walking through these tools, and we're going to be starting with Claude Cowork. If you've used Claude before, the basic flow is familiar. You ask a question, get an answer, copy it somewhere else, then come back with the next question. That works well for quick tasks, but most of the real work inside of a professional services firm isn't quick. There's layers. You might need to read through several sets of notes, find the important pieces, organize them, write them up, and get the result into the right document. That's exactly the gap that Claude Cowork is designed to close. In this video, we're going to show you what it is, how to get it set up, and then run a real task so you can see what changes when Claude is doing more than just answering one prompt at a time. You want to think of Cowork as a different way to use Claude Desktop. Using chat is for basic back and forth conversation. Cowork is for getting work done. You give it the outcome you want, it reviews the files you connect, figures out the steps, and works through them so you can come back to a finished result. Under the hood, it uses the same agent-style approach behind Claude Code, but is packaged for normal desktop work. You don't need a terminal, you don't need to write code, and you don't need to think like a developer to use it. To use Cowork, you need to have the Claude Desktop app, which we see here. It works on Mac, Windows, and Linux. Right now, it's not available in the browser and not on your phone. You'll also need a paid Claude plan, either Pro, Max, Team, or Enterprise, and your computer needs to stay connected to the internet while the task is running. After it's installed, you can open up the app and look for the mode selector, which we've got here. Chat and Cowork appear side by side. Just choose Cowork, and that puts you into task mode. Another part of the setup is the global instructions. So we're going to click over here, go into our settings, and then click Cowork. And there's the global instructions. Whatever you put in here gets read by Claude before every single Cowork session. We could use ours to specify things like preferred document format. So if you wanted it to open in Word or something like that, you can do it here so that you're not repeating yourself every time you start a new task. And before you hand Cowork a real task, it's also worth knowing how it's built to protect your files. It runs code inside an isolated virtual machine, separate from your operating system. Claude can only read and write files in your folders that you have specifically connected, which I'll show you in a moment. It doesn't have free run of your computer. There's also a permission mode selector. You can set it to ask before every action, which is what I'd recommend usually when you're just getting started. Or you can let it act without asking once you trust the workflow. Either way, Claude will always stop and ask permanently before deleting a file. There's no exceptions to that. So let's go ahead and close our settings and come back here. Now you can see that we've got this set. It's pointing at these files. So let's start with our example. This is the folder we have here. Inside that folder there's 4 files. And these are the same kind of scattered notes that I usually end up with during a work week. There's client check-ins, there's voice memos that I dictate, and sort of a catch-all file of things that I don't want to forget. It's useful information, but it's not organized and it's not ready to share. I'm going to point Cowork at that folder, the one you see there, and ask it to read through everything, then turn the notes into a clean weekly recap grouped by client, with one follow-up list at the end and anything time-sensitive clearly flagged. I've actually pre-typed out my prompt because no one wants to see me misspelling things. We're going to paste it in here. Here's our prompt. Read through the notes in the input folder and turn them into a clean weekly recap I can use internally. Group by client, pull out anything that needs to follow up into a single action list at the end, and flag anything that seems time sensitive or risk related. So let's run this. So now we can see that it's going to start working on it. And let's watch what happens here. Before it touches anything, it's going to start laying out a plan. And I think this is worth looking at a little bit closer because we can see exactly what it intends to do before it does it. If something looks off in this, we could actually stop the process right now. And now it's telling us here it has everything it needs from the 4 notes, and it's going to set up the tasks and build the recap. And let's take a look over here. We can always check where we're at with this because it gives us a progress bar. It lists out here, it's going to read and consolidate the notes. That's done. It's now building the weekly recap from the Word into a Word document because I wanted to have it put into Word through my settings. And then at the end, it will verify the recap against the source notes. And now you can see that it tells us it's building the recap document. So we let that go. Should probably take about 2 minutes or so for that to complete. Maybe a little more, depending. I don't remember how large my files were. And then, as many of us know, these things can become quite time consuming. And this is sort of the place in our jobs during the week where we see that we're trying to go through, and if there's different organization levels, everyone works differently. So there's going to be people who are going to spend a lot of time just trying to recap the things that they did during the week. Well, this is going to help you organize and shorten that. It's already created 2 of the files. And it's writing a recap. And as we can see over on the side, as it's still going through here, we see that it's got the voice memo. It just tells us everything it's got there. There was the check-in, which is sort of the follow-up for meetings that I had with some of my customers. And as soon as this completes, we'll actually take a look together at the recap. And now it's just copying my final file to the folder. And here we go. Should be open. There it is. Notice it grouped everything together by a client on its own. I never told it which notes belong together. It also caught 2 things that are easy to miss when you read through these just casually. There's a compliance concern buried in that voice memo about staff using personal emails for client correspondence, and an overdue letter mentioned almost as an afterthought. Both of those made it into the action list. So let's go through really briefly and just take a look at some of the highlights here. So these top 3 are just for customers that I have. I had a call with Bright Futures, list out some of the issues that they reported to our team. The next was a call with the office manager at Hartwell Bryce, same information. Gave us for our staff to address. Whitfield Health. Actually, our staff went on site. They did a router replacement on there. They were checking some of the Huntress alerts. Lists out some of that information, and there's one of the risks there. There's a potential HIPAA issue right here, listed there. And then it gives us an action list and follow-ups for us to do. And everything is organized, and it's organized by customer so that I'm not trying to look through and figure out where things are going and what needs to be done here. All right. So that's the walkthrough. If you're trying to figure out where Cowork fits into your own day, start with something small and familiar. An inbox you need to clean up, a folder of notes you need to organize, or a rough draft that needs to be turned into something more usable. The goal is not to hand Cowork your most complicated workflow on day 1. It's to see how it handles a real task that you already understand, so you can compare the output against your own expectations. In the next few videos in this series, we're going to go deeper on specific workflows, starting with practical examples for law firms and nonprofits. So thanks again for watching.